Alamin natin ang mga programa at aktibidades ng mga kinatawan sa pamumuno ni Speaker Ferdinand Martin FMR Romualdez, Kamara, House of the People. Tuwing Sabado at replays tuwing Linggo dito lang sa inyong favorite music radio.
This hearing of the Committee of the Whole is resumed.
Mr. Chair, I move that we...
Floor Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that we resume consideration of RBH number 7.
There's a motion to resume consideration of our resolution of both houses number 7.
Mr. Chair, for this purpose, may I request that the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary General is hereby directed to read the title of the bill.
Resolution of both houses number 7, a resolution of both houses of Congress proposing amendments to certain economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, particularly on Articles 12, 14, and 16.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recognize the Honorable, the gentle lady from ACT Teachers, the Honorable Franz Castro, to continue her interpellation.
Representative Franz Castro, you have the floor. You may proceed with your interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And may I also request the Majority Floor Leader to answer my questions, Mr. Chair. Okay, so kanina, Mr. Chair, no, pinag-uusapan natin yung mga procedure. After we have approved yung RBH 7, it is possible na magkakaroon ng amendments aside from the 3 that we are talking or the 3 that are contained in RBH 7. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair?
It is possible that a member may propose amendment, but as to whether or not that amendment will be accepted by the sponsoring committee or the plenary is a different story. Oh. Pero pwede may mag-propose, pero not necessarily will be accepted. Yun lang.
Well, tignan po natin yung mangyayari, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
kasi,
as I've said, yung suspicion can only be disproven by the third of events.
Yeah. Earlier, the Chairman Rufus Rodriguez brought out about the resolution on both houses, number 2, during the time of Speaker SB. And there are meron pong 7 na amendments. So, is it possible na during the amendments, like for example, yung ownership ng land, yung tungkol sa media, yung tungkol dito sa Section 10 ng Article 12, and so on po, pwede po bang masama yun doon?
It will depend on any member who would propose that amendment. But if you're going to ask me, may a member propose such an amendment, then nothing prevents a member from proposing such an amendment. In fact, nothing prevents a member from proposing an amendment to delete, as suggested by former Supreme Court Justice Renato Puno, just to delete the 3 entire instead of providing. But as I've said, may propose, but as to whether or not that will be accepted by the sponsoring committee, and if rejected, can be appealed on the plenary, and kung manalo sa appeal, that's the only time that it will find itself being included in the resolution.
Yes, thank you po. So malinaw na po sa atin na pwede pa rin po talaga na mag-propose. So,
as provided,
parang,
talagang there is nothing cynical about that, and wala hong masama doon because it's a procedure allowed by our rules.
Yes. Kung very substantial amount of amendments nga po. So, for example, 3 lang yung nandito, and then you will propose 5 na nandoon. Pwede ba mangyari yun, Mr. Chair, dito sa ating procedure?
Hypothetical po yan. Hindi ko masagot yung hypothetical kung may mag-propose or not. Hindi ko masasagot yan. Hintayin na lang natin kung may mag-propose, gaano karami, and if it relates to to the subject matter being taken up by the resolution. But kung may magpropose, as I've said, it's a right of any member during the period of individual amendment for that, to propose anything. But under our rules, subject to the acceptance by the sponsoring committee, or if rejected, can be appealed to the plenary.
Okay. Thank you po, Mr. Chair. So this is a committee of the whole, Mr. Chair. So kapag na-approve po ito, no, yung ating mga amendments, yung ating RB 87, and kung merong mga amendments, and then magkakaroon ng BICAM, at kung iba po yung magiging version naman ng Senate ngayon na ginagawa, and then later on, nag-BICAM. Kung, Mr. Chair, hindi po nagkasundo doon. So halimbawa, nagboto, here in the House of Representatives, we got the 3/4 of all the members. Pero dun sa Senate, yung kanilang yung kanilang RB 86 or 7 ay hindi naabot yung 3/4. So, anong mangyayari doon, Mr. Chair?
Wala ho. Wala. Ang pinakamaganda ho example dito, local bill. Yan na lang ho, para magkaintindihan tayo. Halos lahat ho tayo may local bill. Na pag napasa yung local bill natin dito, kailangan madala sa Senate, di ba? Kailangan may aksyon ng Senate doon. Pag walang aksyon ng Senate at nirereklamo na maraming kasama, na maraming local bill, pero hindi na-approvean doon, walang local bill.
Pero yung po yung local bill, pinag-uusapan natin, Mr. Chair, ay amendments to the Constitution.
As I've said, alam niyo ho, hindi ko humalaman kung saan ho tayo na hindi nagkakaintindihan eh. Dahil ang sinabi ko na nga ho, we are taking this up in the nature of a bill. Parang bill. So, sabihin ko nila, parang local bill. Parang local bill din. Na kaya lang, unlike a bill na kailangan pagka-pirma ng pag inaprubahan ng mga senador, kailangan padala sa presidente para maging batas. Ito, it's an amendment to the Constitution. If we approve it by 3/4 vote, at least, and the Senate 3/4 vote, hindi na kailangan pumunta sa presidente ito because it's not a bill. Kung hindi, papadala na sa COMELEC to schedule a plebiscite.
I understand, Mr. Chair, yung yung position po ng ating majority floor leader. So, it is not a bill. Yun nga po yung sinasabi ko, this is a constitution. So, hindi ganun kasimple po yung ginagawa natin, na tayo ay nagpo-propose, and then later on, ititreat natin ito as a bill. So, yun nga po, baka mabara tayo just in case na...
Kaya nga ho, papadala natin ito sa COMELEC for a plebiscite. Kasi kahit na naaprubahan ho natin ito...
No, Mr. Chair, pag hindi po nagkasundo,
pag hindi nagkasundo, di wala.
So, wala po tayo.
Kaya nga sabi ko nga, parang local bill nga eh.
So, is it possible, Mr. Chair, that we will magtitipon tayo as Constituent Assembly, yung jointly na? Para isa na lang. So wala nang BICAM na hindi sila...
Hindi ko alam kung mangyayari yan. Hindi ko alam. Kung tanong nyo sa akin, is it possible? Then, hindi ko alam. Ako tingin ko ho. Ako tatanungin nyo, there is no possibility na mag-meet tayo jointly. Katulad ng nasabi ko kanina, dahil nga doon sa takot na baka may mawalang isang institusyon.
Okay. That's all for the general provisions. May isa na lang akong tanong, Mr. Chair, kay Justice Skuna, Mr. Chair. Kasi nandito sa State Policy, Section 19, the state shall develop a self-reliant and independent national economy effectively controlled by the Filipinos. So just in case na maaprubahan po yung mga economic provisions ng both houses, gagawa na po ng enabling law, di ba? Doon sa naipasa po natin ng mga provisions for economic Para po hindi ma-violate yung Section 19, so sinasabi niyo po ba na yung hatian or yung equity between the foreign ownership and the Filipino is maximum to 49.51 para hindi po ma-violate. 51 to the Filipino company and 49. So possible po ba, ibig sabihin, yan ay may maximum. So that hindi po natin ma-violate yung Section 19 on the state policies on Article 2 po. Section 19.
Justice, Ascuna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, in case of approval of this proposed amendment, it's possible that legislation will reduce the percentage, maximum percentage, will increase the maximum percentage from 60-40 to 51-49, for instance, as an increase of from 40 to 49 for foreigners. 51 would be Filipino.
So yan na po yung maximum, Mr. Chair. So hindi po posible yung 100% ownership. Kasi mababiolate yung Section 19 of Article 2. So hindi, Mr. Chair, so Justice, hindi mababiolate po yung Section 19 of Article 2 kapag 100% foreign ownership doon sa tatlong provisions.
The legislation could also provide for 100% foreign ownership. It's up to Congress, actually. It becomes changeable by legislation.
So what is the implication of that to Section 19? Ano po yung magiging implikasyon niyan, Mr. Chair, doon sa Article 2, Section 19 of the Constitution?
The possible implication on that, Madam Mr. Chair, is that we have to look at the entire economy, whether allowing 100% foreign ownership in this particular sector will negate the effective Filipino ownership of the entire economy. It's up to Congress to look at that balance, really. The other proposal is that of Gary Tebes, is to also delete that provision that the state shall promote a self-reliant and economy effectively controlled by Filipinos. But I don't propose that. I maintain that we should still have an economy effectively controlled by Filipinos while allowing foreign investment to come in to a certain extent in certain areas.
So magiging unconstitutional po, Mr. Chair, kapag nagkaroon ng 100% ownership. Kasi kahit ngayon po, kung titignan natin yung mga sectors of our economy, may mga 100% na doon ownership So, constitutionality, constitutional pa rin po ba? So yun po yung tinatanong ko kanina, Mr. Chair. Hindi yung sinasabi nating implication nun sa the whole economy. Constitutionally, yan po ba ay po pwede, yung 100%? Versus the Section 19 of Article 2.
That would be something for the ladies to my left to answer whether such an extent is
Mr. Chair,
negates-
constitutional question po yung tinatanong ko, hindi po sa mga economists. So,
Theoretically, it would still be constitutional as long as, in fact, there is no showing that the effective control of Filipinos of the entire economy has been negated. That is a factual question which Congress will have to determine. If in so doing, it will deprive Filipinos of effective control of the economy, then the legislation would be unconstitutional.
okay. So, yun lang po, Mr. Chair. Time is up na tungkol sa ibang na po ako. Topic na lang po ako.
Yes, I have been lenient with the time because we're very much interested with the discussions. Floor Leader.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recognize the Honorable Lawrence Defensor from the 3rd District of Iloilo.
The Chair would like to recognize Representative Nonoy Defensor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to direct my questions to the good Justice Adolfo Ascuna. I never had the opportunity to appear for an oral argument before the Supreme Court, and I am humbled by this opportunity to ask a Justice of the Supreme Court. As one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution, Mr. Justice, can you tell us, what do you think are the most important provisions of our Constitution as a whole?
the most important provision of our Constitution as a whole is the Commander-in-Chief provision. Who is the Commander-in-Chief?
Will you agree with me that the Bill of Rights are also the most important or one of the most important provisions of our Constitution?
Yes, I would also agree with you. There are really many most important provisions. Article 17 is another one.
I'm glad that you agree with me that the Bill of Rights, which include freedom of speech, amending the Constitution to allow women to vote, allowing people to vote regardless of race or sex, because the Bill of Rights, Mr. Justice, is a mere amendment to the American Constitution. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And if they did not allow any amendment to their Constitution, we would have no Bill of Rights, women will not be able to vote, and so many other things, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, as well as all the other rights vested in their Constitution. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. Although in our case, the late Lino Broca was able to amend the Bill of Rights and in fact improve it by adding freedom of expression.
That's correct.
Something that even the United Nations has recognized, because there is now a special rapporteur of the United Nations for freedom of expression.
That's correct. My point is that we should not be afraid of change or amendments, because we might just find out by trying an amendment that it is good for us. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
I had to ask that because our Constitution, especially our very first Constitution, the 1935 Constitution, was adopted using the American Constitution, which already has 27 amendments, and those amendments, some of which contain enactment clauses, specifically 6 enactment clauses, similar to our proposed phrase, unless otherwise provided for. There are 6 enactment amendments or enactment phrases in the United States Constitution, which reads, "The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation." Mr. Chair, before we used to think that the world is flat, we used to think that everything revolves around the earth. But people stood up on the right side and stood up for what is correct. And now we are on the right side of history. Going further to the phrase, "unless otherwise provided by law," there is a concern or an issue raised that the phrase, "unless otherwise provided by law," could be construed as another form of amendment to the Constitution. And that it was raised that why don't the authors themselves already fix the limits for equity of foreign investors? Mr. Chief Justice, just to give the members and the public a better perspective of what we are talking about, can you distinguish for us in very plain language what is legislative power and what is constituent power?
There's really 2 ways of making these changes. One is to make the percentages.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. As a justice of the Supreme Court, we respectfully request that you distinguish for us, in the simplest terms, what does legislative power mean and what does constituent power mean?
The legislative power is the power to make ordinary laws, whereas constituent power is the power to propose changes, amendments, or revisions in the Constitution.
And by that, do you agree with me na kapag sinabi nating nagpo-propose tayo ng amendment sa ating konstitusyon, by inserting the phrase unless otherwise provided by law, that is an exercise of our constituent power. Correct?
I agree, Mr. Chair.
And once that phrase inserted in the Constitution, unless otherwise provided by law, has been approved by all Filipinos in a plebiscite, such that it is already included in our Constitution, the laws passed by Congress under the phrase unless otherwise provided by law is an exercise of our legislative power. Am I correct, sir?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Are you familiar with the delegation of powers, Mr. Justice?
That is not delegation, but an authorization, I think, Mr. Chair.
I agree, sir. Mr. Justice, since it has authorized Congress, do you agree with me that the proposal to include unless otherwise provided by law and whatever laws may be passed by Congress subsequently is an exercise of, is a political question for members of Congress to decide? Is that correct, sir?
That is correct, Your Honor. It's a question of wisdom now, and therefore it's a political act.
Thank you for confirming that, Mr. Justice. Mr. Chairman, in the case of Tanyada versus Cuenco, 100 Phil, page 105, 1957, the Supreme Court defined a political question as those questions which, under the Constitution, are to be decided by the people in their sovereign capacity, or in regard to which full discretionary authority has been delegated to the legislative or executive branch of government. Clearly, inserting the phrase unless otherwise provided by law should not be considered as another form of amending the Constitution under Article 17. It is delegation by the Constitution to Congress na magpasa ng batas kung ano ang nararapat na ilagay na equity restriction. Halimbawa, in telecommunications, kapag napaabrobahan po natin ang unless otherwise provided by law, hindi po ibig sabihin na 100% ng telecommunications ay pwede ng pagmamayari ng isang banyaga. Pwede pong ilagay natin na 60-40 pa din. Pwedeng 100% ang telecommunications na pagmamayari ng mga dayuhan. Ngunit, bakit mahalaga na nasa kontrol ng Kongreso itong equity limitations? Kasi kung maganda naman palang 100% pwedeng pagmamayari ng dayuhan at nakakabuti sa ating lahat with the safeguards provided in the law, eh bakit hindi natin gawin? Makakabuti yon sa tao. Pero dahil nilagay natin unless otherwise provided by law, kung hindi pala maganda na ibibigay natin ang 100% ownership ng telecommunications, transportation, railway, eh pwedeng bawiin ng ating lehislatura o ng Kongreso para ibalik natin sa 60-40 para tayo na naman ulit ang may majority stake at may control. I had to ask that just to clarify to everyone, especially the public, to distinguish legislative power, constituent power, and how it applies to inserting the phrase unless otherwise provided by law. May I ask Yusek Edilion of the National Economic Development Authority. In all the data presented by those for amending the Constitution or the economic provision and by those against amending the economic provision, pare-pareho pong malinaw na base sa inyong datos, countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam are less restrictive or the least restrictive sa kanilang economic provisions. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Does it also mean that just because they are less restrictive in their economic provisions, ay effectively controlled na ang ekonomiya nila ng mga dayuhan kasi less restrictive sila?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
I agree with you. Does it mean that if we open up public utilities, let's say transportation, let's say distribution, does it automatically mean na effectively controlled na ng dayuhan ang ating ekonomiya?
Hindi rin po.
And do you agree with me that when we say a self-reliant economy, effectively controlled, ang word na economy is a very, very broad term that encompasses everything, not just industries. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Yes.
And does it mean that if we amend the Constitution using these three provisions, automatic ba na effectively controlled na ang ekonomiya ng ating bansa? Yes or no? Thank you for confirming that. Mr. Chairman, I have 1 minute left, and I don't think it's enough time for me to further discuss the points I want to raise and clarify. May I request the majority leader to include me in the second round of questions to our sponsors. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Floor Leader, Representative Defensor, I have been lenient to the other members, but if you still need more time, I can give you more time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But
I'll give you another 5 minutes.
I understand from our committee that there will be more resource speakers who will present, and I would like to listen to their data before I join the second round of questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Floor Leader. Floor Leader. Hearing is resumed.
Thank you,
Floor
Mr.
Leader.
Chair. Mr. Chair, to continue with our list of interpellators, I move that we recognize the Honorable Stella Kimbo of the 2nd District of Marikina City for her questions.
Representative Kimbo is recognized. Please proceed.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Magandang gabi sa ating mga resource persons, and of course, salamat. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us. So, Mr. Chair, I had wanted to propound questions to the Ibon Foundation. Kaya nga lang po ay wala po siya ngayon, si Mr. Sunny Africa. So, instead, I would like to ask questions to our NEDA representative, Ms. Yusek Edilion. So, kahapon, Yusek Edilion, nung nag-present ang Ibon Foundation, ang una niyang sinabi ay the Philippines is now among the least restrictive economies to foreign investment in the region. Yan ang kanyang first slide. Na ikinagulat ko kasi yan ang dahilan kung bakit tayo nandito ngayon. We are amending the restrictive economic provisions of the Constitution. So paulit-ulit natin sinasabi yon, restrictive economic provisions of the Constitution. At marami na tayong nakita mga pag-aaral at laging nababanggit ang OECD Restrictiveness Index na nakikita natin sa maraming mga pag-aaral. So, what is your take on that particular slide? And if we may flash that slide again, can we pull up that slide? Yung pinakita ng ni Mr. Sunny Africa kahapon. If you recall, meron siyang, if we may refer to the, ang hirap kasi wala siya. But if we may refer to the slide of Ibon Foundation, the first slide, kung pwede po sana natin ipakita. Ayan. So ito ang slide ng Ibon Foundation. At kung nakikita natin yung first row, so yung may Philippine flag, kung nakikita natin, puro green. So ibig sabihin, open daw. So lumalabas na maraming sectors na green. So Yusek Edilion, what's your take on this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We actually looked at this one and then looked at the basic data, yung basic study na from where this was taken. And if you look at the OECD study, then it actually lists the Philippines as the parang 182, tama ba? Rank 1, third from the bottom, na pinaka restrictive in the world.
So parang, ang sa akin kasi parang ang lumalabas, parang tila nagkaroon ng cherry picking, parang namili ng sectors na bukas na anyway. Halimbawa, may telcos, merong retail trade, merong tourism, merong healthcare, merong power, at ito namang sectors na to, halimbawa power sector, railway, airports, etc. Yan naman ay bukas dahil during the 18th Congress, kung naalala ninyo, inamyendahan natin ang Public Services Act. Tama po ba? So talagang aasahan talaga natin na bukas talaga siya. Pero kung titignan natin ay maraming mga sectors ang left out dito sa listing ng Ibon Foundation. Tama po ba?
Tama po. In particular, yung mga sector na gusto pa natin buksan.
Tama. Tulad ng education and advertising. So kung inilagay natin ang mga sectors na yan, ay obviously hindi magiging tama ang conclusion na least restrictive ang Philippine economy.
Yes, tama po.
Okay. And more importantly, ang OECD Restrictiveness Index, is that a robust index?
Mr. Chair, it actually has 4 components to it. So yung first one is the foreign equity restrictions. The second one is restriction with respect to employment of foreign nationals. The third one is with respect to procedures, mga protocols, yan. And the fourth one is yung operational, kung gaano kalaki per plant, yung mga ganun. Yung dati nating RTLA, ganun siya. So yung apat na yon. Pero it's being used actually by many foreign investors in trying to decide kung, at saka yung it's really a basis of information for them how restrictive a country is.
Okay. And if the Secretariat can put up my slides, ito naman, yung slides ko na, please. At ito naman ang aking natuklasan. So, nung ginamit natin ang, actually, this is Rooter. Salamat ako kay Mr. Lacasa na staff natin sa CPBRD. Pinagdikit ko ang kanyang dalawang graph at ginamit ni Mr. Lacasa ang OECD Restrictiveness Index at pinagdikit ko to para mapakita natin kung gaano ka ganda o gaano ka robust yung OECD Restrictiveness Index. Kasi kitang-kita natin dito. So for the Philippines, pinapakita niya. So ibig sabihin yan, kung mahaba yung bar, ibig sabihin nun, restrictive yung sector na yan. So halimbawa, for the Philippines, mahaba ang bar ng mining, mahaba ang bar ng media, mahaba ang bar ng business services, mahaba ang bar ng telcos. Ibig sabihin nun, restrictive ang sectors na yon for the Philippines. But on the other hand, maikse ang bar ng manufacturing, maikse ang bar ng financial services. Ibig sabihin nun, hindi restrictive or bukas ang sectors na yan para sa Pilipinas. So, kung bukas ang sectors na yan, aasahan natin na maraming pumapasok na foreign direct investments sa mga sectors na yan. So kung titignan natin ang pie chart, yung pie chart na yan, ang minimeasure ng pie chart na yan ay ang FDIs na pumapasok sa Pilipinas by sector. So makikita natin, indeed, dahil malaki ang slice para sa manufacturing at financial services, ibig sabihin nun, hindi dapat tayo magtaka na dahil bukas ang manufacturing sector at bukas ang financial services sector, nakakakuha ito ng mga maraming FDIs. So ganun kaganda ang OECD Restrictiveness Index. So would you agree with me, Yusek Edilion, na yan na talaga ang gamitin natin na index?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Your Honor.
Okay, so at least nag-agree tayo na wag tayo dapat mag-cherry pick katulad ng ginawa ng Ibon Foundation. At pasensya na lang, Mr. Sunny Africa, wala po kayo dito ngayon. Sana magandang mapakinggan kung bakit yun ang ginawa niya dito. So let me go to my next point, which is the second slide of Mr. Africa. So, pasensya na sa Secretariat. Magja-jump ulit tayo sa second slide ng Ibon Foundation, which has to do with the growth of foreign investment over the years. At ang punto ni Mr. Africa is, bakit pa natin pinagkakaabalahan itong napakahirap na Econ Chacha? Kitang-kita naman natin, hirap na hirap tayo. Pinagdedebatihan natin ito in both chambers. Ang haba-haba ng ating debate. Ilang oras na kayong nakaupo dyan. Nag-aaway-away tayo sa ilang modes ba dapat ang gagamitin natin sa pag-amyenda. Napakahirap na gawain ito. Bakit ba natin kailangan gawin ito? Pero, ang sabi ni Mr. Africa, tignan mo naman, tumataas naman ang ating FDI over the years in terms of FDI flows and in terms of FDI stock. Baka naman, Yusek Edilion, you are a statistician and an economist. Napakabihirang kombinasyon. Pwede niyo bang ipaliwanag sa amin ano bang pagkakaiba ng FDI flows at FDI stock?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The FDI flows, this is actually net FDI flows. So, yung pumapasok minus yung lumalabas. So, yung mga pumapasok sa atin, there would be equity inflows, and also kapag halimbawa yung mother company nagpautang sa kanyang subsidiary dito, that will be counted as inflow. Meanwhile, meron ding reinvested earnings. So, nagstay lang naman dito yon. And then yung lumabas is repatriated na earnings, and then yung mga nag-withdraw mismo. Yung binawasan na nila yung branches nila siguro, or nagsara altogether. So, this one is actually very, very, what we call a noisy data. It's very time-sensitive. Kasi depende kung yung mother company nagkaroon ng problema. We have seen that happen in some companies dito, di ba? So pwedeng magkaroon ng biglang dadaming repatriated earnings, pero the next year babalik na naman dito. Yun. So pwedeng ganoon. So we don't really look at it will not be good to look at flows and then you want to correlate it with something that is parang a stock. So dapat talaga yung stock ang tinitingnan mo, which actually will also establish the trend for you. So yun ang mas stable na series, kumbaga.
So ibig sabihin, FDI stock is yung binibilang mo yung pagpasok ng kapital, yung total nun by the end of the year. Tama ba yun?
Yung as of.
Yung as of
the
a
end of the
certain
year.
time, which typically is by the end of the year.
Yes.
Okay, so in short, ang titignan natin is FDI stock. Okay, so pwede ba natin tignan ulit? So ang tinitignan natin is yung lower graph. Okay, so ang sabi ni Mr. Africa, ayan, tumataas naman ang FDI stock. Okay, so bakit pa natin ito ginagawa? Hindi na natin kailangan paluwagin. Hindi na natin kailangan ng flexibility dito sa ating Constitution. Okay, so ano ang sagot dito, Yusek Edilion? Is this a correct perspective?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor. Actually, two things po dito. Number one, totoo naman na tumataas, and I would say that that actually is a product of the liberalization efforts that we have done in the 90s and then in the 2000s. Yun. Kaya tumaas. It really will take some time. Pero kung ang titingnan naman po natin ay i-compare natin naman sa ating neighbors, for instance, whereas kunwari Vietnam na lang, kasi halos magkapareho tayo nung unang panahon ng Vietnam. So, whereas I think it was 1990, no, nasa mga 3.2 billion tayo, ang Vietnam nasa 200 or 300 million na FDI stock. And then fast forward to 2022, Philippines would have 112 billion US in terms of FDI stock, whereas Vietnam would have 210. So, pwede pa pala na mas malaki pa ang naging increase natin sa FDI had we gone mas naging aggressive tayo sa pag-attract nito mga FDI.
Okay, so in short, siguro maganda na ipakita ko na lang yung isa pang slide na sa Secretariat. Pwede bang, can you put up my slide, the second slide? Ayan. Baka mas magandang ipakita ito. So yung blue slide, yung blue line is exactly the line that Mr. Africa showed in his graph. Tama ba, Yusek Edilion?
Yes, Your Honor.
So tama naman. Ito yung FDI stock. Pataas nga. Kaya lang, hindi niya pinakita na relative to our neighbors in the ASEAN, tayo ang pinakamababa. Iwan na iwan tayo. Relative to Vietnam, which is the orange line, Thailand, which is the gray line, Indonesia, which is the yellow line. So yon ang very important fact na hindi pinakita. So tumataas nga ang problema, iniwan na tayo. Iniwan na tayo ng ating neighbors. Ang problema, the name of the game is competition. Tama ba, Yusek Edilion?
Yes, Your Honor.
So yun ang dahilan kung bakit natin ito ginagawa. Tama ba?
Yes, Papa.
So, kailangan ba natin gawin ang e-conchacha ngayon? Yusek Edilion.
Ano yung tanong ulit?
Do we need to do e-conchacha today?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Kasi kung hindi natin ito ginawa today, lalo tayo maiiwan. So I will end there, Mr. Chair. Marami pa akong tanong. Can I be listed for the second round, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much, Congresswoman
Chair.
Stella.
Mr. Chair.
Majority Leader. Yes.
Just an
Congresswoman
intervention, Mr. Chair.
What is
Doon
your pleasure?
Yeah. As regards to the last graph po na pinakita na ating colleague, as regards to yung iwan na tayo ng mga Vietnam, Thailand, etc. So, may tanong lang po ako sa intervention, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair.
Majority
Mr.
Leader.
Chair, may we request the Secretariat to flash the last slide? Okay, so Mr. Chair, if
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, so ang pinapakita dyan yung inward
Wait,
of...
Congresswoman Castro, would you want to interpolate? Is that what?
Yeah, intervention lang po doon sa...
So you want to make a point of clarification on
Yes,
the
clarification lang po doon sa NEDA.
slide? Okay, you may proceed.
Yeah, kasi yung pinapakita po dyan yung inward FDI stocks, no? At sinasabi ng ating na NEDA na nagko-confirm siya sa ating colleague, si Representative Stella Kimbo, na talagang iwan na tayo talaga in terms of inward of FDI stocks. So ano ba yung implication nito? So that does say nung graph na ito na in relation to restrictiveness. Yun ang contention dito, no? Yung pagiging restrictive ba ng ating constitution ang dahilan kung bakit ganyan, or meron pang ibang factor. So yun naman. So paano ba nakukuha yung inward FDI stocks? Iba-ibang factors.
Mr.
So
Chair.
tanong natin kung may pag-aaral ba kayo tungkol
Mr. Chair.
dyan, Mr. Speaker, ang NEDA as regards to that. So bakit tayo nagkaganyan?
So, Mr.
Ang may
Chairman,
kasalanan ba
may
talaga
we
yung
request
constitution natin
NEDA
na
to-
very restrictive?
Mr. Chair.
Yun po, Mr. Speaker.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair.
Mr. Chair.
That was actually my next question, but because my time is up, I asked to be listed in the second round. So if I could actually pursue that line of questioning, if I could, but in the second
No,
round. Otherwise, if you would give me
Insofar
additional
as
minutes.
yeah. Anyway, insofar as the question was directed to you in a slide that you presented, I will allow you to answer and enlighten the
Mr.
question.
Chair, Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Chair,
with
mukhang,
record-
Mr.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Okay.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
Congresswoman Castro, wait. Yeah, Majority
Yeah,
Leader.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the current status is that it was the time of the Honorable Stella Kimbo, and there were actually follow-up questions. And I believe the next question that the Honorable Stella Kimbo wanted to put forward was brought up by the Honorable Franz Castro. With this, Mr. Chair, may I move that the representative from NEDA be allowed to answer the question of the Honorable Franz Castro. And Mr. Chair, in addition to that we'll move at the proper time, maybe you can give the Honorable Stella Kimbo an extension of 2 minutes.
Okay. So you may proceed.
NEDA muna.
We'll have Nether first, and then Majority Leader, if it's okay with our members, we'll give Congresswoman Stella Kimbo a few minutes to also give her reply.
Yeah, we don't have any objections, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Neda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, meron pong naging study dyan. We looked at, there is a multi-country study. So this is also done by OECD. Tapos tiningnan nila dito, they looked at other variables. Yung sinasabi niyo maraming other factors, no? Ease of doing business, nandiyan din yung governance, nandiyan din yung tinatawag dito gravity model eh. Kung gaano kakalapit si host country at saka si source, no? Si source and destination country, naging colony ba siya, magkapareho ba sila ng lingwahe, in terms of human capital, all this. Even the infrastructure is also included. But the results would say, and this is very robust, that even controlling for these factors, yung impact on restrictiveness is statistically significant and it's negative. Tapos, like I said kanina, 4 yung components ng restrictiveness index. Kapag ang kinonsider mo lang is the equity restrictions, that also comes out as negative and statistically significant. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So,
Thank you very much, Neda. Congresswoman Kimbo?
Yes. So just to tie it up with the Iban Foundation slide, because I believe that Kong Francis' question, I believe, stems from a slide which came from the Iban Foundation presentation. And if I may, can we refer to that slide, which says reducing restrictiveness doesn't even guarantee foreign investment? And if we can put up that slide, because I believe that dun kasi nanggagaling eh, dun humuhugot talaga ang si Mr. Sonny Africa. Sinasabi niya, wala naman talagang koneksyon yung pag-iis ng restrictiveness sa pagtaas ng FDIs. Ang sinasabi niya, walang correlation yan, walang relasyon. Pag nirelax ninyo ang equity restrictions, wala yan kinalaman sa pagtaas ng FDI. So, ang tanong ko kay Yusek Edilion, wala ba talaga? So yun, which is a follow-up question, di ba? Wala ba talaga? So ang sabi ni Yusek Edilion, actually merong isang paper by Fernando Mistura and Caroline Roulet. It's a 2019 paper entitled The Determinants of Foreign Direct Investment. Do Statutory Restrictions Matter? And in this paper, it covers 60 countries. So Yusek Edilion, dito sa paper na to, sakop ba ang Pilipinas? Kasama ba ang Philippines sa study na to?
Yes, Your Honor.
You are a statistician, tama?
Apa.
You have a PhD in statistics, tama?
Economics pa.
Economics.
A Master of Science degree in Statistics.
Okay.
Kong Stella, can we wrap this up?
Yes. So, with your expertise, masasabi mo na robust ang evidence dito.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, may relationship ang pagbaba ng equity restrictions at pagtaas ng FDI investments.
Yes, that's correct.
And in addition, kahapon, narinig ninyo ang statement ni Ms. Hazel Percon at ni Mr. Rucher Lacaba. Tama?
Yes.
And ano ang sinabi nila? Yung findings ba ng studies nila, do they corroborate the findings of Mistura and Roulet?
Yes, essentially.
So all three studies would indicate that may relationship ang pag-ease ng restrictions sa pagtaas ng FDI investments. Tama ba?
That's correct, yeah.
So would you agree with me that, again, yung slide na to sa Ibon Foundation presentation is not accurate. It is not accurate to say that foreign investment restrictions would be weakly correlated with foreign investment flows.
Yes, Your Honor. I think it boils down to the fact that they were trying to illustrate in just one page, two-dimensional, yung katakot-takot na other factors involved. So, ang dapat kasi talaga, you use statistical technique para i-keep constant mo yung other factors and just change yung restrictions. And that is what the multivariate statistics would do.
So, Mr. Chair, that's my last question, but I need to go on a second round so I can ask questions to Ms. Hazel Percon. So,
Yes.
hindi na siya babalik tomorrow.
We will
Thank you,
definitely
Mr.
give you
Chair.
more time on the second round. Thank you
you.
so much. Majority Leader.
Mr. Chairman,
Congressman Lagman, yes?
Just a short intervention. In these studies, USEC, is there any statement that in a scale of 1 to 10, what would be the correlation of constitutional restrictive provisions to the entry of foreign direct investments?
Chair, there is actually a very expressed statement in the article that says that of the 4 restrictiveness components, it's actually the statutory restriction, which is the constitutional restriction, that negatively affects the most yung FDI.
When you say the most in a scale of 1 to 10, where does it point to?
Kung yung apat ang i-rank?
No. The restrictive constitutional provisions, what is its correlation to the entry of direct foreign investment if you have a scale of 1 to 10? And there is no study yet on that.
Minus 0.28 eh. The elasticity is a minus 0.28. So, ibig sabihin, if you are able to, naka-index siya, no? So if you are able to relax by, let's say, 10 percentage points, then tataas ang foreign direct investments by 2.8%.
Because there are other determinants of
right. Yes.
of foreign direct investments. As we have said previously, ease of doing business, where we are lagging. Then with the corruption index, official corruption, again, we are lagging behind. Then in the stability of government policies, again, we are not scoring well. Also in the infrastructure support investments, as well as the speed of the internet and the cost of power. So there are so many determinants. And I am just asking whether these other determinants could induce more investments if properly addressed, even if we do not amend the Constitution.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chair, yeah. The thing is, if there's a statutory restriction, then that's the first, that's the first, kumbaga, gate, or that's the first barrier na eh. So kung close na siya kaagad by statutory, restrictions, hindi na rin the other factors won't matter.
They would matter, of course.
Mr. Chair.
Even if we remove the constitutional restrictions, if we don't address these other determinants, the investors will not come.
Yes, definitely, Your
Definitely.
Honor.
Thank you.
Dapat mo nang tanggalin si first barrier.
Mr. Chair, with due courtesy to our very good colleague whom I admire, unfortunately, we still have 5 members who would wish to avail of the first round.
I am ending my intervention, Mr. Chairman, but I just would like to have a point of information.
Yes. Let's allow the point of information to be clarified, and then I'm sure Congressman Lagman will be winding up soon so that we can proceed with our 5 other interpolations.
Earlier, a colleague said that the Bill of Rights of the Philippines is virtually patterned after the United States. That was the impression given to us. I think our good colleague overlooks that the malicious Constitution of 1899, which antedated the 1935 Constitution by 36 years, already had the equivalent of the Bill of Rights. That is under the Filipinos and their national and individual rights. Actually, it consisted of 30 articles, from Article 6 to Article 32. Even more than our present Bill of Rights, it only consists of 22 sections. I just would like to make that clear, that we did not actually pattern our Bill of Rights after the American Bill of Rights, but we had already this Bill of Rights 36 years before we adopted the 1935 Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Congressman Lagman. Majority Leader.
Alamin natin ang mga programa at aktibidades ng mga kinatawan sa pamumuno ni Speaker Ferdinand Martin FMR Romualdez, Kamara, House of the People. Tuwing Sabado at replays tuwing Linggo dito lang sa inyong favorite music radio.